and it hits me, oh my gosh, this is that triangle.
You know, there's explanation for everything that occurred in the Rendlesham Forest incident that doesn't involve aliens at all.
It was completely silent. It comes right over our heads.
He saw a classic flying saucer, really, standing in the clearing.
He turned over to my father and held his hand, and he looked in his eyes and he said, "We're not alone."
Welcome to Podcast UFO for our live show. We're live every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the Dark Matter Radio Network. Please remember to visit the website podcastufo.com for past episodes, blogs, and forums. During the show, feel free to participate live in our chat room. And don't forget to like us on our very active Facebook page.
Hello, this is Martin Willis, your host of Podcast UFO, and in just a couple of minutes, Alejandro Rojas will be joining me for the news, and he claims he has a surprise guest to join in. I have no idea who it is. It's kind of exciting, actually. Our guest this evening is Dr. David Jacobs, and he'll be talking about his new book, Walking Among Us, The Alien Plan to Control Humanity. And I'm sure we're going to be talking about a lot of other things as well. It's Veterans Day. Here in the U.S., it's Veterans Day. And if you are a veteran, we want to thank you for your service, your intentions, and your sacrifices to keep us safe. Thanks, veterans. I want to once again thank Sam Bosell, who's been helping us out with the supporter platform. He's now done something for our chat room, which will pop up automatically on all of our web pages. Right before the show, and it'll go away right after the show. Thank you, Sam. And speaking of support, if you want to find out how to do that, you can check us out right on podcastufo.com. And while you're there, jump in the chat room. I mentioned a while back that a bunch of people offered to do graphics for our new Podcast UFO T-shirts. I think there was about 13 people contacting me. Well, we got 4 of those people out of 13 that actually presented some graphics. So if you'd like to go to our website, right on our sidebar, you will see you can get to that page to vote. We need you to vote. We have 2 weeks left for anyone to cast their vote on what graphic you want for a T-shirt. So that's right on the show notes or right on our sidebar. You can see how to get there. And I think that's just about it. So that closes, by the way, November 18th. And that's enough for me. So, Alejandro and your mystery guest, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good, good. Do you want to bring on the mystery guest now? Or?
It's David Jacobs. Just kidding. Actually, though, he is speaking at the UFO Congress.
He is.
So you should spend a lot of your interview with him talking about the UFO Congress and how exciting it is that he's speaking there and stuff like that.
All right. I might.
No, actually, I'll let our guest introduce himself.
All right. Hello, guest.
Hello, this is Arnold.
Arnold. Hi, Arnold.
Chumaneda. How are you?
Not bad, Arnold.
No, actually, we're
California. My name is this is Ruben Uriarte from Northern California. How are you?
Hey, how you doing, Ruben? Yes, Ruben's been on the show, Alejandro.
Oh, he has. Good.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
It's been a while. That's right.
It has. Yeah, I think it was last year or so. Ruben, you joined me with your partner. You've written some books with him. His name is, who is it?
Mr. Noe Torres.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, so Noe and Ruben will be speaking at the Travis Walton conference this weekend. And so Ruben came in today. Noe comes in tomorrow, and then I'll be driving him out there. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Yeah, so that's why Ruben's here, and I figured since he was in the office and I was doing the interview, it'd be kind of fun if he joined us for the news.
Absolutely. Now, that's the 40th anniversary is tomorrow for the Travis Walton and the Skyfire. What's the name?
Yeah, the Skyfire Summit. Yeah, exactly. And tomorrow is the 40th anniversary of the event. And Ruben and I and others will be at the location where it happened at dusk, which is when it happened. Yeah. And we possibly may get beamed by a ship and taken away. I'm gonna push Ruben in the way. And
yeah, they're all gonna leave me.
Well, a few weeks ago, I had Michael Shermer on, and he totally He just came out and said that Travis was lying. The whole thing was a hoax, and it had to do with him getting a paycheck for work that wasn't completed.
It's so ridiculous that they make such an assumption. And Travis speaks to that theory that they had to get a paycheck, and he talks about how them creating this elaborate hoax would not get them out of the work that they had to do. So if you ask Travis about it, the theory just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, I didn't agree with him at all on that. And, I stood up for Travis. But because I really, truly believe, I believe that story. I believe Travis, I've talked to him eye to eye many times about it, and it's just, it's a solid one if you ask me.
Really cool is that, and you know what would be great, actually? You're going to be talking to David Jacobs. Ask him his theory about Travis Walton, because I don't know what it is. I think it'd be interesting to hear what he thinks about it, especially given his perspective. But what's really been fascinating with, my girlfriend's been putting together this event. And over the years, I've worked with these witnesses. And, the witnesses kind of bicker back and forth, almost like brothers, like people have known each other their entire life. Mm-hmm. But they don't bicker about what happened or if anything happened. And they all individually are dealing with what happened. One of them, his email address is Ken UFO. And because this event, all of them have or they have different perceptions about what happened to them, but they don't, none of them deny what happened. And you can tell it's had an effect on each of them differently. And as much as they fight, I think with as much has gone on through the years, definitely one of them would have said, oh, he's lying, that person's lying. But that's not the case. It's even when they have disagreements, and these are not like sophisticated people, I would say. These aren't, people who are out there promoting themselves like some of the other people in this field who, you question their motives. These are just regular guys, living their lives. And I have not seen any indication working with any of these guys that has given me any doubt. And that's what's kind of fun, too, is that we're going to have more of the witnesses that have than have ever been together this weekend, and the police officer who was the first on the scene. Wow. And you know what? Karen, my girlfriend, is the one who got a hold of him and got him there. Travis, none of the guys know what he's even going to say. And they're not against him coming. They're like, great, that'll be great to hear what he has to say. Mm-hmm. So they don't even know. He could just say, oh, this was a hoax and these guys were full of it. They don't even know. And I think that speaks to how that they're not afraid of anybody coming and talking about their opinion or their experience with the event.
Wow, that's great.
If I could jump in real quick.
Yeah, Ruben, go ahead.
Make a point. I've known Travis now for a while, and I've had a chance to really get to know him at a number of our conferences where he was our features guest speaker. And the thing that always stand out for me, of course, he's just one heck of a humble guy, a straight shooter. But the other thing, when the question is asked, well, what would you do if this happened to you again? And he said, I won't tell anybody. He says, I wouldn't want to go through what I had to go through, but obviously, he's gone through so much over the years, and his mission is to make sure that the story is told correctly, rather than having other people interpret or misrepresent his story. So tomorrow is going to be really awesome, and the rest of the weekend, Alejandro and Karen have worked very hard, along with Travis and a number of other people to put this conference together. So it being the 40th anniversary, this is going to be a very special event.
Right.
Karen's done an amazing job.
Yes, I didn't realize that the Karen was your Karen.
Yeah, my Karen. Yep.
Uh-huh. Because we had a conversation getting some people speaking, Lee Spiegel, one of them, for one, to pipe up and talk about the conference coming up tomorrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, great. Do you have any news? Or
I do.
All right,
Every week I got news, baby.
All right. Lay it on
Okay.
us.
So the news this week, this one's kind of fun because this is a story written by Roger Marsh from MUFON for our site. And this was about a Texas sighting that included a photograph where these people said they saw something bright. They took a picture. The kid in the car took the picture. And then in the picture, there's kind of this cylindrical object that turned up. So kind of a weird photo. It's kind of cool because San Antonio newspaper picked up this story and wrote about it today. Some people have been debating. One person said they think it looks like a road sign that is blurred from motion blur. I don't know that I necessarily see that. It does kind of look like it's an object that might be affected by motion blur, but it's not like apparently obvious what this might be. So it'd be great if your listeners could look at that, and if anybody can tell. What do you think, Ruben, of that picture? It's hard to tell.
It's hard to tell. An image, faded out image above, and I guess it's to determine if it's closer to the street or if it's far off at a distance.
Yeah, it's hard to tell even how close to the object they are. But kind of an interesting picture.
Now, is this the one where it's looking vertical, like a cylindrical? Vertical?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yes. That is really an interesting picture, and that will be on our show notes and as well as linked to openminds.tv for the whole story.
It is kind of funny. Ruben is pointing below the pictures is another giant cylindrical object, but that's a giant rolled up sod, or I think it's hay or sod. Yeah. Actually, I think it's sod.
And this was taken where in
Texas? This is in Frisco.
Frisco.
Getting frisky in Frisco.
So we have unidentified flying sod. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. Well, it's not flying. We have identified stagnant laying there sod.
Okay.
So nothing. But we do have another one. This is a video from California. And this one's kind of strange. And I'll play this for Ruben's sake. I don't know if you saw this one.
No, I haven't.
Martin. But it's the video's not that great because it seems like I don't know what's going on with the camera here, but it's just these lights in the sky. He actually took 3 videos, and we have on the site the best out of the 3. But these lights kind of turning on and off. They're multicolored and just kind of weird. The witness says he thinks that these lights were interacting with each other, that perhaps one of them beamed one of the others. He thinks, maybe they were battling up there or something. I don't know about that because they do most of the time look like they're in place. But they do turn on and off, and they are different colors. So kind of an interesting video there from Castro Valley, California.
In fact, that's right next door to where I live.
Where do you live, Ruben?
Yes. Yeah, I live in Hayward.
Oh, yes,
California.
I know where that is.
And Castro Valley is right next door. We've gotten some other footages from other witnesses in the past in that area there. It's definitely
and this is
in
a
our
MUFON
database.
case. So
this will be follow up with one of our investigators.
And in fact, I think, let me see, usually Roger will put in the story, and I can't remember on this one if it was investigated. You probably would know who it was.
Alameda County, yeah.
The state section director, Kim, investigated it and closed it as an unknown.
No. Okay, Kim's from San Francisco area.
Mm-hmm. Which is near where you are, right?
Yes, we're right there in the San Francisco Bay Area. So we have several investigators that live in Kim's one of them.
Are you still you were a section director?
I'm now the state director for Northern California. Mm-hmm. And we have an assistant state director and a chief investigator. And we cover approximately 45 counties just in Northern California alone. Mm-hmm. And in Southern California has about 13 counties. Now, we tend to come in as number 1 usually every month in terms of how many cases have been reported. But also there's a lot of sightings going on across the country and in other parts of the world. But Texas tends to be number 2. And then we get Florida, sometimes Michigan, and then in Colorado, and in a number of other states. So each month we get a deluge of cases, and it's hard to keep up.
Yeah.
Ruben, you mentioned, Alameda County, and it just made me think of Alameda Island out there where it used to be an air base.
Oh, yeah.
And was there ever any sightings around that base? Did you ever hear any stories about that?
Yes, actually. Along the bay, we've received reports from motorists that are driving on the San Francisco Bay Bridge, for example, where they've seen strange objects. Although now Alameda is no longer an air base, and now it's a lot of development there. But we get, interestingly, we've gotten a number of reports of objects out there, or mostly orbs, out there out there by Golden Gate, also I think normally sometimes when we have Fleet Week, now that's where the Blue Angels will perform.
Right.
We've had a couple of occasions where we've had people who submitted their photographs to us where they actually captured an object real close to the Blue Angel formation, and that's a no-fly zone. And normally when they perform, they close down everything around a 5-mile radius. But it's really interesting when they're able to capture something. And so some of these reports we had, they were determined as unknown.
Wow. Interesting. Well, we're running a little late here, but I want to thank you very much. Ruben, it's great to talk to you.
Yeah, same here, Martin. Thank you.
And thanks for joining us for the news. And Alejandro, thanks, and we'll be talking to you next week.
All right. Thank you. Talk to you next week.
All right, everyone. So hang in there for the quick music break, and we'll be right back with David Jacobs. Welcome to the show, David.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, and last time you were on, we were just talking when we did the sound check. That was a long time ago. It was, I think I said it was 2013, right?
You said 2012.
2012. Wow. So anyway, you were on way back then. Most people, I'd say, probably everyone listening right now knows who you are, but this podcast does go international. So can you just quickly give your background? And I'm kind of fascinated because I know that you were into UFO history, too, at one time. So,
yes, you'd like me to do that now?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Just kind of a quick, in a nutshell, your background, how you got interested in all that.
Well, I got interested in the UFO phenomenon in the mid-1960s, around 65, 66, and that summer I went to, my wife and I went to Madison, Wisconsin from UCLA, where we were at, for graduate school, and I became extremely interested in it there, too, and I joined national UFO groups, and I started reading UFO magazines, and I became a, quote, field investigator, unquote, and ran around interviewing people and all the rest of that sort of thing. And I wound up writing my doctoral dissertation in Wisconsin on the controversy over unidentified flying objects. And I just sort of stuck with it after that. In 1982, I met Bud Hopkins for the first time, and he introduced me to the abduction phenomenon, which I didn't have a whole lot of interest in beforehand. And in 1986, 4 years later, I started doing my own hypnosis with abductees, and consequently, here we are.
And you've written several books.
Well, I've published 5. The first one was my dissertation with an added chapter in it and more research. The second one it was called The UFO Controversy in America, published by Indiana University Press. And then the second one was called Secret Life, which came out in 92, which was about abductions. And then 5 years later, The Threat came out, which was also about abductions. Then I published an edited book called The UFOs and Abductions Challenging the Borders of Knowledge, and with 10 people who were very involved with the subject, including one sort of debunker. And that was published by the University Press of Kansas. And then my last book, and it's been a long time because that book was published in year 2000. Here it is 15 years later, and I've got another book, Walking Among Us.
So we're going to talk about that. Just to let you know, we have a couple things this live show. We have a call-in number for the listener out there. If you're listening live, 603-967-4030. We also have a chat room. Some questions were already piling in there a minute ago, and I will get to those. But let's first talk about your book. Why did it take you so long to write another book?
Well, I was hearing the same things. I was continuing to do loads and loads of UFO research. And starting in 2005, I began to hear things that were different than what I'd heard before. Or it was 2003, now that I think about it. 2003, I'm sorry. And I waited for other people to say the same things, and pretty soon more and more people were saying the same things without knowing about the others. And I eventually decided that this would be sort of an ending of my abduction career type book. That is to say, once I wrote what I knew now, once I wrote it up, I might be able to just do what my life's ambition is, which is to watch television all the time. And but I couldn't get the book published. Just couldn't get it. Tried for several years, couldn't get it published. And this was starting around 2008 or so. And finally, I found the press who was willing to do it, and so it took 15 years of research, but also of searching for a publisher.
Wow. Now, did you go back to the publishers of your other 4 books?
Oh, yeah. Well, you can't publish a book by yourself. You must have an agent. And that's what she did. She went back to Simon & Schuster, and the problem with that happened to Simon & Schuster was that I had this book, The Threat. They had actually requested the book, and it's a good book. It holds up. Secret Life has flaws in it now that I realize now I know more about the subject. But The Threat is very good. It's pretty solid all the way through. And so everything was fine. Everything was great. And they put me on a book tour, let's say, done was for Secret Life. And the first place I went was CNN. And then I went to another, the next day, another outlet of some sort. And then we flew to we were going to fly to San Francisco, or we did fly to San Francisco to do a show. And then basically it came to a halting screech when the Monica Lewinsky story broke. And I was canceled on virtually every show that they had set up. And that was the end of the book tour.
So that didn't only affect the White House, it affected you as well.
It was the White House. And so in other words, I never made up the advances they gave me. I'm still paying it out, so to speak. I don't make any royalties on the book. It all goes for the advance.
I wanted to say also, just for the listener out there, the music that I just played in this intro, it's called Hybrids Among Us, and that is by Carrie Lloyd Whitehouse, who wrote this music and dedicated it to Andy Fleming, who used to be on this show. And so that music is available also. He said anyone can download it and use it, and that's right on our sidebar. And the chat room was wondering why I wasn't active just a few minutes ago, and that is I just want to apologize to everyone because I just mentioned that we have our T-shirt graphic contest, and while I was trying madly just a few minutes ago to get a voting poll in there, I deleted the whole thing, so all the T-shirt graphics are gone. Please check back in a couple of days when I get that straightened out. Sorry about that. All right, so that's enough housekeeping. And so David, you said that you started your interest in the abductions all the way back in 1986. Is that what I heard?
In 82, I got in, when I met Bud Hopkins, he introduced me to, I knew about Barney and Betty Hill, and I'd read the Andreasen Affair and some other stuff, but it just didn't seem all that convincing to me, and the problem with abductions is that they come straight out of people's brains, as opposed to UFOs, where you can see something, you might be mistaken, but there's ways of measuring it. There's radar, there's film, there's all sorts of things that we know about that we know for evidence about UFOs. And with abductions, it's mental or it's happening. There's nothing in the middle. You can't be mistaken about something. You're either making it up whether you know it or not, or it's happening in reality, one of the two. So I was conservative, and I went for the making it up aspect of it, even though Barney and Betty Hill were different. They were two different people. But one case like that does not a world make. You have to wait for others of the same kind. And I was much more comfortable with UFOs, to tell you the truth. But Hopkins showed me how he had me sit in on sessions with him that he was doing hypnosis sessions, and he introduced me to abductees because I had never met one before, and he was extremely gracious and very kind and very giving in terms of what he was doing. And it was obvious to me that he was on to something. I remember I was director of the American Studies program at Temple at that time, and I came back after visiting. Turns out that I had gone on, my wife and I and our baby had gone on vacation in exactly the same spot that Bud Hopkins owns a house and is there for the whole summer. That's in Wellfleet, Massachusetts, on Cape Cod. And I came back from seeing Bud up in Wellfleet. And I told Alan Hynek, who was a friend of mine and the dean of abduction of UFO researchers in the country and former advisor to the Air Force for UFOs from 1948 to 1969. And I told him that this guy, Bud Hopkins, I think was onto something. That I was impressed by what he was showing me and telling me and all that. And Alan said, no, stay away from that, David. Stay away from that stuff. You just stick with UFOs. Don't go near that abduction stuff. I said, I don't know, Alan. I think he's got it. Something here. This is a. And Alan, reiterated that was just not the way to go. He just it wasn't in his world, But I should have actually just taken his advice, and I would have been a happy person for the rest of my life. But I didn't, and so I got ensnared in the abduction phenomenon.
Yeah, a couple of things. You just mentioned a minute ago that it all comes from the brain. Are there any cases that you're aware of where there was witnesses to an abduction, total bystanders?
Oh, absolutely. There are cases like that, but the most famous one was the Linda Cortile case that Bud Hopkins wrote a book about called Witnessed, where I can't remember. I think it was 24 to 29. It was something like that of witnesses to the actual event or to matters surrounding the event.
Now, I was contacted by someone that told me that there was new evidence or something that came out that was a hoax. Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, yes, I do. It's not a hoax.
Okay.
Because I know Linda Cortiel very well, and I knew Bud, and I know how hard he worked interviewing as many human beings as he could possibly get. There's a lot of characters around who really like tearing people down, and you got to be very careful because the Linda Cortiel case is a very good case. And a very strong case once you understand sort of everything that happens.
Now, remember, they float through the wall. There's some type of dignitary in a limo or something that witnessed. Am I getting the right one?
Yeah, that's the one. Actually, the initial aspect of it was people in their cars on the Brooklyn Bridge saw Linda flying out her window from a. She lives in a high-rise apartment in New York City, and there was a UFO and there was 3 aliens with her, and there were people who were staring at this with their jaws open from their cars, and one of them wrote to Bud saying this is what she had seen, and Bud had already done a session on that incident, but he hadn't dug very deeply into it. It just sort of happened. Then she described what happened to her on board the UFO and this and that. And nobody knew that. Nobody. This is unknown material. And suddenly this woman writes him and says, on this date in 1989, I saw some woman coming flying out of a window with 3 aliens into a UFO. and that was Linda. And she correctly identified the building and what she had seen at the time and the rest of that stuff. And as she said to Bud, she could hear people screaming in the cars behind her.
Wow.
That little detail always stuck in my mind. This is just this woman who lives, I guess, in upstate New York and was there at the time. And he then began to uncover other aspects of it, and he spent an enormous amount of time running down leads and contacting people and making sure his case was solid and all the rest of that. And it was. And I've known Linda for years and years and years and years. She is not the kind of a person who is going to invent a hoax and have over 25 people or whatever it was as part of this hoax, including these people who witnessed this on the ground, one of whom was a major international figure and all that. This would take a team of people working for a movie for a year to get all this just right. And this is not just not possible for one person to pull all these strings, and not a single person coming forward and saying, well, Linda told me to do this and she slipped me $100 bill or something like that. Nothing like that ever came about.
Sure. Now, I noticed I can hear a little bit of feedback. If you wouldn't mind turning down your volume just a little bit.
Okay.
There's a question up on the message board for you. It says, for Dr. Jacobs, is there other current researchers you have collaborated with that share your hybrid alien agenda theory? And in parentheses, he mentions that you mentioned deceased researchers such as Bud Hopkins. Is there anyone living?
Yeah, I don't know. There's only a handful of serious researchers in this country. It's absolutely awful. There's Yvonne Smith in L.A.
Oh, yes.
And there's Kathy Marden in Florida. And Jed Turnbull in New York City. And there's a few others, but it's not like there's hundreds of them out there and just waiting for people to tell them things. And it's considered to. It's worse now. We used to have more researchers. There used to be John Mack, and of course there was Bud, and there were others as well. who went on to having a life, whereas I just stuck with the abduction phenomenon, and I guess that Yvonne would be closest to me. But I've had a tremendous advantage over almost anybody and everybody, because I retired from Temple University in 2011, but before that, I could spend a lot of time with abductees. I taught on a Monday, Wednesday, Friday, or a Tuesday, Thursday schedule. So if I taught on a Tuesday, Thursday schedule, I could have time on Monday, Wednesday, Friday in my home office to work with abductees. I would spend between 4 and 5 hours with each one of them. An hour talking in the beginning, a couple of hours of hypnosis, then an hour of talking at the end, etc. And they could come as many times as they wanted. Neither Bud nor I ever charged any money for this. And I worked with people sometimes for decades. So I could see change over time. And I could understand how how the operation of this abduction phenomenon was going. And I learned how to do a kind of questioning that is chronological and logical. Nothing is taken for granted. Everything is sort of logical. Now, I shouldn't say nothing is taken for granted, because if I'm working with somebody for the 40th time, then when she says to me, well, I got up on a table, and do I have to go through all what they did on the table? And I'll say no, because I've already heard hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of cases of people's on table. I know what they do, and I've heard her many times to know what they do. So we'll go on to other things. But I became very much aware of change over time.
Hang on, just keep that thought just 1 second. I just want to address this. Caller person just tried to call in. Please be patient. I can't always answer right away. So if you try to call in and I couldn't answer, please do try to call in and just be patient. I'll get right to you as soon as I can. Okay, keep going if you would.
Well, the point is that I was fortunate to have the time, and people could come as many times as they wanted to. They could stop. A lot of them stopped coming after one session. That was it. But there's one person, for example, named Karen Morgan, who's in my new book. And she's in Secret Life, she's in The Threat, and she's in my new book. And each one, you can see the change over time in those. And so I could spend a lot of time with them, and it was different than just having, let's just say, a slot of time for 2 hours. And a lot of people who are hypnotherapists do this, and they can only afford so much time. And they get a person in, they ask a bunch of questions, this and that, and then it's time to go. Now they have to talk to the person first, and they have to talk to the person afterwards too. So there's, and it's a different sort of, I don't know, environment with me. I have a home office and all that. So I was extremely fortunate, and my wife bore everything with dignity. We had been married. My wife died earlier this year, but we had been married for 51 years, so she was in on everything, and she was perfectly fine with my spending all my time with abduction people, with abductees, So everything just sort of fell into place. Everything was good for me in terms of doing this research. And the same thing with Bud for many ways. He was an artist. He had time that he could put aside for doing abduction research. Now here's the problem. Now supposing somebody young comes along and he wants to be an abduction researcher and he wants to do hypnosis with abductees. And he or she is, let's just say, 23. The question is he going to be able to do significant investigations with people who are 63? are they going to tell him the intimate details of their personal life, including sexual and reproductive material that happens on board, to a 23-year-old, to a kid who's sitting there? The answer is that's been tried, and it doesn't work. And so you have to get somebody who's older, let's just say in their 40s, who can do this kind of work, because it is intimate, and it relates to people's entire lives. But when a person is 40, they already have a career. They're a 9-to-5 worker, or 9 to 12, as the case may be these days. At night, the people work longer and harder now than ever before, and they're married and they have kids, and they can't go through the training it takes to become an abduction investigator and then spend 4 or 5 hours several times a week with somebody. It's very, very, very difficult to get anybody to do this and to do it right. That's the problem.
Right. First of all, I want to say, and also up on the message board as well, we're sorry to hear about your wife, your loss.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Now, there is a question up going back to Linda. How do you say her last name? Corteil, yeah.
Yeah.
Someone wanted to know, do you know what motive Bud Hopkins' ex-wife said the reason Linda Corteil was a fraud?
I know. I read certain things that Bud Hopkins' ex-wife said, and this was a wife that he had divorced before he died, and they were not, let's just say...
I've read a few things, too.
Yeah, well...
So I know what you're talking about. They didn't part on such good terms.
They did not part on good terms, and Carol sort of went on a campaign to discredit him. And if you knew anything about Bud Hopkins or had ever met him, you would realize how intelligent, gracious, and kind he was. And there was not a crooked bone in his body, I will say that. He was a straight shooter. He did uncover a plot to sort of discredit him, a guy who was lying to him, and he did his due diligence. And the guy had told him some stories, and he checked them out, and they were not true. And he found someone, and it happens that way. He worked with a lot more people than I worked with, but then again, I worked with people for longer periods of time. And although with Linda, he worked with Linda for a long time. And Linda, I'm not exactly sure what she was referring to, because she did a sort of scattergun thing that this was wrong and that was wrong, and all sorts of other things he did was wrong. I don't agree with her, but I will say this for myself. You have to learn how to do this on the fly. There's no book that shows you exactly how to do hypnosis with abductees. Everything is new as it comes along. Not everything, but you're constantly seeing new things, and you have to make the decision: is this correct? Is it not correct? And all that. But when you do it, you're making new pathways. You're clearing the trail for other people to come along and also do it. And that's what Bud did, and I hope that's what I'm doing as well. But the Linda Corteil case might have an oddity here and an oddity there. But on the whole, this is a good, strong case. As I said, I've known Linda for many, many years.
I also would question why Bud would spend so much time with her if she was a fraud. He wouldn't. I mean, that wouldn't make any sense to me.
He would have detected it right away.
You would think so.
And Bud was extremely smart, and that just would not have happened. It's not possible anything is possible, but it's not possible, in my opinion, that that would have happened with Linda. Linda is not a hoaxer. She didn't. There was no reason to be a hoaxer. There was nothing in it for her other than the event that happened, along with a whole bunch of other events that happened that nobody knows about. She's an abductee. It's happened all her life, and there's nothing makes everything makes sense if she's an abductee and had this experience, and nothing makes sense if she's an abductee and didn't have this experience. Right.
Just again, someone tried to call in, and I missed you. If you're listening and trying to call in, please be patient, because little behind the scenes here, I have different computers that I'm looking at. One's in a chat room on one side, and then the phone calls on another side. So I don't want to miss your call. You can call again if you would. Let's see. There was another question up on the board, but excuse me. One of the things they always you always hear and I always wonder about is people always say they accuse people that do regression of leading the person, and what do you have to say about that?
Right. Well, almost everybody who comes to me knows two things. Number one, they don't want to be led by the hypnotist to think that they're a teapot or a chicken or something like that, and they don't want to pick up things in popular culture and then parrot them back to me as if it happened to them. They're all aware of that. This is not arcane information. You know what I mean? This is just, everybody knows that a hypnotist can make people do things that they don't realize they're doing and all that. Well, what I do is simple relaxation techniques. And Bud learned them from a psychologist who he worked with originally, who did the hypnosis. And then I learned them from Bud. And it's just muscle relaxation and then a little bit of deepening. And then I just ask questions. And people will say to me, David, I don't think I'm hypnotized. And I'll say, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Just close your eyes, lay back down. And it doesn't matter. And I start asking questions, and I might do a tiny bit of, I'll count from 3 to 1, and you'll feel more and more relaxed, something like that. And that'll be it. And that's it. And they say, I got to go to the bathroom. I say, okay, fine. Go to the bathroom, lay back down, and I just continue questioning. And then we'll have a discussion about something that relates to it during the session. And then I'll just continue on with my questioning. It's not like they're in a trance and they don't know what they're saying or what they're doing, or they're thinking to themselves, especially in the first session, they're thinking to themselves, this is the dumbest question I ever heard in my life. Should I even give this guy the benefit of an answer? That's what they're thinking. And they're so worried about hypnosis the night before. Some of them don't get sleep. I have to warn them about this beforehand. After they do their first session with me, it never, ever occurs to them to think about hypnosis as something to fear ever again. Just once they realize they're in total and complete control. They're thinking about the questions. They're thinking about whether that's a correct question or not, and this and that, and they realize that it's just trying to dip into these memories that are hidden beneath the surface. It's probably a short-circuiting of the too many statins in my brain. I have no memory left anymore of your short-term memory. Short-term memory cannot dig into the other long-term memories. Where the event is probably laid down, I think, I guess, I surmise.
Okay, just switching gears here for just a minute, and that is, so Travis Walton probably wasn't your average abductee. He claims himself that he thinks it was almost more or less like a rescue mission once he was zapped with that beam. But a question Alejandro Rojas asked earlier on in the news was, what does David Jacobs think of the Travis Walton case?
Well, Travis is a friend of mine, and I've known him for many years, and he's an extremely intelligent, extremely thoughtful person.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
And he's If he is an abductee, and I think he is, that means that he automatically has had abduction experiences since he was a young child, and they're probably continuing now, because that's what happens basically with all abductees. It's intergenerational. You're an abductee because your mother or your father was an abductee, and then you become an abductee. Then if you get married and have kids, they become abductees. Hang on a second. I have to get an animal off my lap. Okay, Carrie, later. She'll purr into the microphone. That's the problem. The problem is he only remembered 20 minutes of a 5-day event. And has not wanted to do hypnosis on that event or any other events that he might have had. And so we really don't know what happened to him, in essence, on board the UFO. And I know that he's been trying to make sense of it. And he's come up with his own ideas about how they helped him or whatever it was. But that's not what other people say. And I examined the 5-day event once with a woman, and known as, her name was Allison Reed, and I have 24 hours, I guess, of testimony from that 5-day event. She came, I think, for 8 3-hour sessions of hypnosis, just describing what happened to her. And that's the way it kind of has to be when you're gone for 5 days. And so not only her, but her husband and her child as well. And there were certain aspects of their lives at that time where nobody missed them. They had just moved to Florida or someplace. They did not have jobs yet. They were not set up yet. And they were all taken at that time and for 5 days, and nobody knew that they were gone. So the fact is, though, that Travis's case was astounding because it was witnessed. Mm-hmm. At least there was a witnessing of a UFO flashing a light at Travis, and then him falling backwards and all that, and then not being there when people, charged off in their truck as fellow workers, and then came back looking for him, and he wasn't there. But they saw a UFO in conversation, so to speak, with him. And that's good enough. That's a witnessed event. And so, once again, Travis is not a person who lies or anything like that. He's not a charlatan. But he has built, these ideas that he thinks make sense to him, but maybe perhaps aren't the same as what everybody else is saying, because they know more about their own backgrounds.
Yeah, I would think that in Travis's case, that was a one-off situation under the circumstances, that he wasn't abducted since childhood. I mean, when I asked him about that, he said no, that was the only time that he was aware of. Are you thinking that he may have been abducted and not realize it? Well,
if that were the case, that would be the first time we've ever heard of anybody being abducted, especially for 5 days, and it was the only time ever. But you have to remember that most abductees, and I'm going to guess here, maybe 90 to 95% of them, do not know that they're abductees. This is a clandestine phenomenon. It is secret, and the way in which you start secrecy is you keep it secret from the person that it happened to. So most people do not know that they're abductees who are abductees. In other words, they might lead unusual lives. They see angels, they see devils, demons, whatever. They see in their bedroom or in their living room or whatever, They see dead people who've come back to say goodbye to them or whatever. They travel on the astral plane. One guy was telling me he traveled on the astral plane. The funniest thing was he could see all the leaves and dirt and stuff that had gotten into his gutters on top of his roof. And I thought to myself, well, if you're traveling on the astral plane, that would be an interesting memory to have. How you got to clean your gutters. But and
type A personality, yeah.
Yeah, right. So the point is, though, that every single abductee I have worked with, and I think probably everyone that Bud has worked on, have had these experiences since they were children, and will continue into old age. It stops somewhere in old age. We don't see a whole lot of people who are 80 years old, let's just say, on board a UFO. That is, when people are abducted into a larger UFO, they sit in a room, a circular room, their clothes are removed, and they wait their turn to be processed for whatever they're going to have to be doing. And I'll ask them, well, are there, men and women there? And they'll say yes. And I'll say, you see any children? No. Sometimes yes, and most of the time no. And they'll sometimes, remember somebody who was abducted or whatever. But the fact is, though, that all that can easily be forgotten. And as soon as they leave, it's gone from their memory. But at least I ask them sometimes, do you see anybody who's really, really old? And they almost always say no.
Wow.
So we think it stops somewhere in old age, but we can't be sure. We don't really know.
It's just as baffling as the whole rest of it. Someone wanted to know on the message board, do you share your techniques with others that are looking to get into this process? Yes.
Bud and I put together a packet of materials about 100 years ago that I still send out to people if they ask for it. But my next book will be How to Do Hypnosis with Abductees. And I think that the market for that, it'll probably be well into the tens and tens. So I will self-publish that book.
Tens and tens. Big seller. That's what you're thinking.
Right.
Well, you never know because, you hear these numbers of people that think they've been abducted. And what is your thought on that? I mean, some people are saying millions of people.
Oh, yeah. Millions of people this is a global phenomenon. This is not an American phenomenon. We're not special. So aliens have come here because we are Americans. Bud and I have worked with people from around the world. And
uh-oh. Caller?
Hello?
Yes, sorry. I meant to add you to the call. I'm going to have to hang up. I'm sorry.
All right.
I think I'm back.
Sorry about that. I totally pressed the wrong button when the caller called. All right. I want to apologize to the listener out there listening live. I just tried to take a call, and I clicked the wrong button, and everything went to heck. So, caller, please try to call back. I will add you to the call this time instead of taking your call exclusively, which is the mistake I made. So, David, I'm sorry to have interrupted you and had you go to dead air. And I can't remember exactly what you were talking about, but there's certainly some questions up on the message board.
It happened much too much in the past for me to even possibly remember.
Okay. And I can't scroll up to any of the questions. So one of the things you mentioned that it happens generational. It happens when someone is a young infant, and it goes on to their family and on and on. So I believe that we were talking about how many people, how many numbers.
Right. Well, and the point here is that this is not an American phenomenon. It is. There's nothing special about us. It goes into in Latin America, it's in Europe, it's in Asia, it's in the Far East, it's in the Near East, it's in the Mid East. It's everywhere. This is a global program, a global phenomenon. Just like it is the UFO phenomenon as far as I'm concerned. And so there was a poll taken in 1991, and there have been other polls too. Our poll showed that about 2% of the American public were abductees, which is about 6 million people. That was extremely conservative. It's probably closer to maybe 5%, maybe more. But in spite of all those polls, both Bud Hopkins and I received thousands and thousands of letters from abductees around the country, around the world, and they still keep coming now in the form of email, of course. It's a global phenomenon. You have to remember three things about this that are salient to its existence. It is global, it's intergenerational, and it's clandestine. It's secret. And the reason it's secret is because they don't want us to know what they're doing, obviously. If they did, it wouldn't be secret. But it is not something that I look upon with joy, I must say. This is not only that, but they're not testing us, they're not examining us, they're not trying to find out what makes us tick. This is a program with a beginning, a middle, and an end, and it's goal-directed. They are here for a reason. They are doing things for a reason. You're seeing change over time, and the reason is coming, I think, which I can talk about a little bit later if you wish.
Yeah, we can talk about that in the second hour. We're just about ready to take a break. I'm going to try to take this call, okay? Hang in there, everyone. Hopefully this will work. Caller, are you there?
Hey there, Martin. It's Justin from Canada.
Hey, Justin. How are you?
How are you? Are we live right now?
We are, and go ahead and pose your question to Dr. Jacobs.
Thank you. Hi, Dr. Jacobs.
Hi.
Thanks for listening. How are you?
Good.
My question goes into some territory that I think that should be addressed. First of all, I'd like to say that I like Martin said, and the sentiment is in the chat room too, that we're very sorry about the passing of your wife, the terrible loss. Secondly, I'd like to say that I have read the threat. I think your insight is interesting, and I think it's a question that should be asked in a situation where we don't exactly know what the nature of these quote-unquote beings are, if that's really what they are. So I want to thank you for all your work, but the question I have is basically the elephant in the room, and I think that publicly it needs to be addressed to a wider audience, especially on this show, because this is a really great show with a lot of great integrity. And that's the story sort of Emma Woods and her accusations with you. And I think there's a lot of people that sort of would like you to kind of clear the air and give us your perspective, especially those who have been with you since the beginning publications and who would like to possibly invest in future publications.
Yeah, I don't usually like talking about her. My stomach churns too much, I must say. She is a woman who I worked with for several years, a couple of years, who lives in another country, and who, over the course of time, basically decompensated, and we sort of stopped working together, not on the best of terms. And as soon as that happened, she began an all-out assault on me, saying things that, such as I was a sexual pervert because I'd asked for her unwashed underpants, and I never really answered her. It's been 8 years she's been cyber stalking me, including just a couple of days ago, and I'm building a website now to answer every single sort of a charge that she has leveled against me. She's complained to Temple University. She complained to the Department of Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C., I have become her life's work. and this is all she does from what I can tell. The underpants thing actually was something that was interesting. We're looking for DNA. And she wrote me a letter once saying that she thought she might have had sexual contact with a hybrid in her house. There was a lead up to this, and she had a Q-tip, and she was going to send it to me. And I said, "Great, fine. We need DNA, and that would be wonderful." And then she wrote me another email later saying that she lost it or something like this. Now, I'm not getting this exactly 100% correct here. And then another month later, she wrote me another email saying that it happened again. She's got a Q-tip. She's going to send it to me. And then she threw it away or something. And then a couple of months later, she writes to me and she says that there was a discharge in her underwear. And she said, I said, well, this is important and all the rest of that stuff because DNA. And she said, well, she washed them. I said, even though it happened yesterday? She said, yes. I said, "Oh, okay." So another month goes by, and then she writes me again. She says that it happened again, and she said, "I got this discharge in underpants." And basically, I said, "Listen, Emma, just stick it in an envelope and don't even think about it, and just send it to me." I am a sexual pervert, she has claimed. And this is so insane. If you knew me, it is so crazy, so nutty that. But I never ever answered. This is the first time I've ever talked about that particular incident. She's got a whole bunch of other things, charges leveled against me. Now I never met her. She is a person who I dealt with on the phone. This was before Skype, actually, and not really before Skype, but Skype was not known yet, and she also did not have a camera for her desktop, but. So I've never met her face to face, and a lot of psychiatrists have said, "Well, you should have met her face to face, and you might have learned something then." And the answer is, I don't know. I don't know whether that would have been true or not. But she has been my nemesis, and she, as I said, it's been 8 years, and this is all she lives for these days. She could have stopped at any time she wanted to if she thought that there was something wrong with me or whatever. And the problem is that she has all these charges against me, but they're all, like as I just explained, way out of context. So that it does sound like I'm some sort of lunatic who's preying on young women or something like that. And let me just say that is not the case. So anyway,
Justin,
so that's Emma Woods, and I'm not going to talk about her anymore. You can Emma Woods, The Real Story is the name of the website. It's in the process of being built, even though it's live now, but it will change drastically. I'm redoing the front and there's a person helping me do this because I'm not all that tech savvy. And there's a beginning which will be changed, I hope, by tomorrow. And I'll go into every charge that she's leveled against me and show people exactly what happened. And you will, when people read what I have to say, they will understand, I hope.
Okay. Yeah, I actually have been. I've seen firsthand, the effects of cyber attacks, especially in this day and age. So I really appreciate you actually, taking the time to talk about that to the audience, because I don't think most people understand how hard that can be, especially for you, who is a public figure. And I think it's important for people to know that there is a resource maybe that they can see and read the backstory on. So thanks for maybe clearing the air on that a little bit. Thanks, Martin.
Well, I've talked with about a dozen psychiatrists, psychologists, and therapists about the situation. And they all have one answer. Don't ever, ever, ever respond to her. Ever, 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 ever. Because eventually she'll just lose interest and go on to somebody else. And that was very good advice pre-internet. And now it's a whole different story. I stuck with that until now, and I've been a punching bag for her for so long. As I said, 8 years is a long time, and I'm 73 now. I just absolutely have to answer, even though they're still telling me not to do it, but I'm doing it anyway, and people can make up their own minds then.
Yeah. Okay, Justin, thanks very much for the call.
Hey, thanks, guys. Good night.
Good night. All right. So, David, hang in there. Hang in there, live listeners. We're going to be right back right after this quick music break. All right, we're back live with David Jacobs, and I do appreciate the calls. A lot of people have been trying to call, and all I can tell you is keep trying, and if I can answer the phone and bring you on, all you have to do is introduce yourself with your first name, and we're good to go. So the number for anyone that does want to call is 603-967-4030. Okay, so that was interesting, and I understand when something's on the internet, it stays around too, whatever information it is. I've had experience with that, like a house that I bought one time, real inexpensive. I didn't want everybody to know, but you still can see what I paid for it. Things just don't go away.
Yeah, exactly right. And so if she's going to keep doing this, and if I just have to respond. I'm sick and tired of it. 8 years is of cyber stalking is really a lot to me.
Mm-hmm. A question up on the message board, and it's come up a lot in abductees, and also Nick Redfern spoke about it. And comparing your interviews with the abductees, have you noticed any commonalities between various abductees, i.e. Rh-negative blood?
I asked 10 abductees if they had Rh-negative blood. None of them did. Now, here's the problem with Rh-negative blood. People don't get married to other people because of their blood type. And therefore, if this is a phenomenon that is intergenerational, you get married to somebody who you love, period, and you might find out their blood type later on. You might not, who knows. So if, in fact, Rh-negative was a significant aspect of the abduction phenomenon, what we would see would be a rise in the number of people with Rh-negative blood, because they would be the ones chosen to be abductees, and since it's intergenerational, they'd have to do some sort of messing around. I'm not sure, but to get that, but we don't see anything like that as far as I know. Like I said, I think this is. It sounds interesting, but it actually isn't. This is a global phenomenon with millions of people. Now, Rh-negative is not all that common. It's unusual. So I don't place any stock in it at all.
I had Klaus Svahn of Sweden. He used to be the director of the UFO Association over there. They take this very seriously over there, and there's not any ridicule to speak of or anything. Interesting guy, and I always ask when I talk to people in different countries about the abduction incidents in their country, and he said that he only hears about one a year there. Do you think that it's going back to what you said earlier, that people are having the experience but not sure what it is?
Yes, I think that's what it is. And I've got a bunch of people from Scandinavia who've written me, filled out my questionnaire on my website and all the rest of that stuff. And incidentally, remind me to tell you something about a discovery that I made this very day. We have probably a greater background in UFOs and abductions than any other country, because we had national studies of the phenomenon of UFOs through the Air Force and through other organizations, and we still have national organizations and all the rest of that, and we also were sort of first to uncover the abduction phenomenon, even though the very first case we ever learned about took place in Brazil, the Antonio Villas-Boas case in 1957 in Brazil. Mm-hmm. But we kept at it, and so the Americans, so people know about the abduction phenomenon here. It's all over television. At least it was for a while, and I don't know whether that is the case in Sweden or Norway or whatever.
Well, this kind of goes back to the pop culture question you asked, right?
Well, it becomes part of popular culture, and people, watch it on television. They think that, oh my God, I've watched this. Now I'm polluted, and if I come to do research in it, I'm just going to say what I saw on television. People are aware of that when they go to when they come to me anyway. But my guess is that Sweden is loaded with abductees, just like every other country. And Sweden had made its mark with the ghost rockets in 1946, right, which were probably UFOs. The abduction phenomenon is the UFO phenomenon. In France, they say, there's hardly any abductees in France, but there's very little places for people to understand what the symptoms of being abducted are, and there's very little places to go to investigate it in France. Therefore, there's nobody being abducted in France. But I don't have that many, but I have about 25 or 27 emails from people who live in France who are abductees, obviously, and so it's everywhere. And the reverse of that is, no matter where I go, this includes Brazil and Argentina and places in Europe. And everywhere through the United States, no matter where I go, people rush up to me. They grab me by the lapels. They put their nose in my face, and they say, I come from a little village in Oklahoma, and it's a hotbed of UFO activity, Everybody says that to me, no matter where they're from around the world. And that hotbed of UFO activity is because there's a lot of abductees there. And what happens is, I have to remove a cat again who wants to be on my lap, but it's not good right now, Carrie. Thank you. So it's what happens in small towns or small villages is that a family might be abductees. There might be several families who are abductees, like 50 years ago or 80 years ago or whatever, and they marry people in the town. And then they all have kids and they marry people in the town. And so what you get is a higher concentration of abductees in small towns than you do in big cities oftentimes, because that's what, they meet people that they grow up with, and then they get married and all that, and all their kids are abductees. And therefore it becomes a hotbed of UFO activity.
I want to ask you the blanket question, and that is why. But before I do that, before you answer that, I should say, one of the theories, or you heard people talk about, was back in the 40s, there was some type of deal made with the government that trade tech for abducting, for information or whatever. And I just wanted to hear what your thoughts were on that.
That would be well within the non-truthful range, let's just say.
Yeah. I figured so, but I wanted to hear what you had to say.
They don't need no stinking contract. They can do whatever they please. They can do whatever they want. The difference between aliens and us, and this is aliens of all kinds, including hybrids, including what I call hybrids, who are the ones who are walking among us and living here. The difference is that they can control us neurologically and from a distance, and we cannot control them. That is not just a difference, it's a crushing difference. It makes us into a second-class species. Mm-hmm. It makes us expendable. It makes us into like people have unbelievably intelligent dogs or something like that. Not quite like that, but we have a lesser ability to use our own brains than they do, and so I just don't like that, and therefore they don't need a contract. They do whatever they want to do. This is an extremely evolved technological society. Any technology that you're going to find that is from outer space automatically and absolutely has to be extremely advanced, not just a little advanced, but really advanced. And the reason is because our technology, which is how we measure things, is brand new. It's only a couple of 100 years. And if you really want to stretch matters, you could say it's 10,000 years old, our technology. Why, 10,000 years ago, somebody rolled a flat stone and called it a wheel. So that would be technology of some sort. 10,000 years is not even a quarter of a nanosecond of a blink of an eye in geologic or cosmic time.
Right.
So if somebody has any kind of technology at all out there, it's going to be extremely advanced compared to ours, because ours is brand new. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a flaw in this argument. The flaw is there might be so many civilizations with technology out there that by the law of averages, a few of them might be right where we are, just beginning. Mm-hmm. That's the flaw in the argument. But generally speaking, it's going to be very, very advanced. So what you see here is the concept of invisibility, the concept of taking people right out of windows, closed windows, right out of walls, up through the ceiling and into somebody else's apartment, and up through the ceiling and then into the air without being seen, and passing through matter. You see stuff like that, and it's just you have to think about it as this is future technology. This is what technology will look like sometime in the future.
David, just a few minutes ago, you said that you had a discovery today. Do you want to talk about that?
Yes. If anybody buys my book, but the website that they put down that is my website is not the website that I have at the back in my little biography at the back of the book. It's the wrong website.
Does it go to Emma Woods? Is that who it is?
No, thank God. They put down UFO abductions with an S.com instead of UFOabduction.com. And Joe Montaldo used to own UFOabductions.com, and I think that he's abandoned it or reselling it or something like that, because I looked at it after I saw this error, and it's for sale.
Oh, you can do a redirect. Either that or every book signing, you can change it in the back of the book.
That's what I'm going to have to do, but I've been told that they're running out of books at the warehouse, so in the next printing they'll print the correct website. But anyway,
so much for editing all your copy, and then you get there and do that. Wow.
Right, exactly. Well, these are typos. You can't get rid of typos, and they're in all the books that I've written, and they just no matter how many eyes are on it, you're going to get typos.
I just heard Carrie try to get up in your lap again. I think now on the message board, someone wants to know if all the abductions are physical or some of them just psychological or psychic, or in other words, like mind abductions.
Yeah, there is no such thing as mind abductions. These all happen in real time, in real place. They're really physical. People come back from them with marks and bumps and bruises on their body. They come back with them sometimes with fully formed scars on their body that they didn't have before, which I have seen. I just said something that is biologically impossible. Fully formed scar tissue, a scar an inch long, that was not on a person's hands who I had seen the day before. I looked at something And my jaw hit the floor when I saw that. Even I was astounded to be. I was looking at something that was impossible. That's not impossible if you're an abductee. And sometimes they come back with their clothes on inside out, or some clothes on backwards. Sometimes they come back wearing somebody else's clothes.
Is that right? I've never heard that part. Wow.
Oh yeah. This is real time physicality. This is nothing. One time I had a guy say that he went to sleep on his couch and he went to Venus or something like that while he was on his couch, and he came back and everything was wonderful, and no, and only 5 minutes had passed, and no.
Okay, you're welcome to call in out there. I'm sorry I have missed a number of calls this evening. That number is 603-967-4030. So, David, in your opinion, what the heck is going on? Why is this happening? This is your opinion, but I'd like to hear it.
Okay, well, there's a lead up to this opinion. First of all, in the threat, I talked about these beings were saying that to abductees. Well, they would bring an abductee into a room, and they'd show the abductee an image on a screen, and it would be here's the two of them that I usually talk about. One is people lined up on steps like a class photograph, and looking at the camera, smiling, whatever. And the person looks at this, and they're puzzled as to why they're looking at these people standing on these steps. But then they hear telepathically, can you tell the difference between you and us? And the person, the abductee, looks at it and hardly understands the question. They say, well, what do you mean difference? Everybody looks the same. There's no difference. What are you talking about? And they say, see, isn't that wonderful? Soon we will all be together. Soon there's going to be a change. Everybody's going to be happy. Everybody's going to know his place. Soon this is going to happen. The change is coming. And then other people would tell me the same kind of story about a change coming and soon. And more people would tell me that. And then I then would ask them, well, what do you know what they might mean by the change? Nobody knew. I said, well, do you know what they might mean by soon? Because soon is a relative term. It could be a nanosecond from now, at a billionth of a second, or a billion years from now, for all we know. And nobody knew that either. So in 2003, I started to hear these stories that indicated that something was happening, that people who you could not tell the difference between human and hybrid were beginning to appear in the society. And the first time I heard that, I just cast it aside, because when you hear something for the first time, it's not evidence. You have to have other people verify that. And then another person said the same thing. Then another one, then another one, then another one, then another one, then another one. And then I thought to myself, well, this might be the change. This might be the change they were talking about. But it might not be the change. It might be a prequel, so to speak, to the change. It might be a harbinger of the change that is coming later. I do not know, because I don't know what the change is. However, what people began to say was that they were not only helping hybrids learn about what life is like on Earth from the time they were children until the time that they're teenagers and even older on board a UFO, but in fact, they were doing it here in normal society, and these beings were living in normal society also. And I had never heard that before. And then I started to hear a lot of it, and people were not aware of the other one's testimony, obviously. And so the question then is, why? Well, we don't know the answer to that either. And then, but when you look at the big picture, and you can't look at the small picture here. This has to be the big picture. It's global, it's intergenerational, it's secret, and they can control us neurologically. So my sense of this is I'm calling this global acquisition. I think that they're plan ultimately is to take over the Earth in some way, or at least civilization on the Earth. In other words, I don't know what's happening in every country. I don't know what's happening in North Korea, for example. But we do think, it does appear to be global, and there's really strong evidence for that. It appears to have been going on for a long time, as early as the last quarter of the 19th century. And if you erase that and you just go with sort of evidence, then of the 19-teens, and then the 1920s, more evidence. The 1930s, more evidence. In the 1940s, that's no problem. Lots and lots and lots and lots of cases when people were young in the 1940s. But so we know it's been going on for a long time, which means that there's been a lot of time and energy and thought put into this program of planetary acquisition. And I've learned that it's a complicated business, but it's simple also. It's sort of beautiful in its construct, as scientists might say. It's acquisition through hybridization, and it's just a slow but now constant stream of people who look like normal, average, everyday individuals, just moving into apartments, having abductees help them, having abductees teach them about the 10 billion things they don't know about on Earth, even though all their lives they've been taught what it's like to be on Earth. But once they get here, they need somebody to hold their hands up for a lot of things. And that's what abductees do. And then they learn enough, and they go on to somewhere else, and the abductee gets another hybrid who's moving in, or hybrid, as I would call them, a combination of human and hybrid. That I just put the two words together. And to differentiate the ones who are actually living here as opposed to all the rest of the hybrids who are part of the workforce and are on board the UFO. So... But we don't know why planetary acquisition seems to be the goal. Now, that's interesting that we don't know why. It's just like in the threat. Nobody knew what soon meant, and nobody knew what the change meant. This is this phenomenon, as I said before, it's psychological or it's happening. If this were psychological, people would simply tell you why they were doing it, because they're making everything else up. Why wouldn't they make that up? We'd hear it from here, from there, maybe not from everybody, but from most people, just like the change and soon. We'd know. But in fact, the ones who are doing this don't say why. Therefore, the abductees don't know why. Therefore, I don't know why. Therefore, nobody knows why.
So there's no... what do you think... You said that earlier, you just said a minute ago that we're going to know at some point soon or something, but soon, what is soon?
Right. Well, this is when I asked abductees what did the aliens mean when they said soon, nobody knew. But when they said soon in 1997 and 1996, when I was doing the research for the threat, everything was the same and stayed the same for years afterwards until I began to hear stories that I never heard before. And then I realized that this might have been what they meant by soon, and this might have been what they meant by the change, although I can't be sure of that. But it was different than anything I'd ever heard. And you have to understand that the abduction phenomenon is... When you listen to abductees talk about their experiences, for them it's the most astounding thing that has ever happened in the history of humankind. And it is.
I can understand that.
For me, it's I'm going to use the word soporific. I've heard these stories so many times over and over and over and over and over again that I have to fight to keep myself awake during sessions. That is unfortunately literally true. And I learned the hard way, having fallen asleep, because I'm just hearing the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over, and I'm asleep now. And consequently, but that's extremely important because it's all verification. They're all saying the same thing, and they don't know anything about this subject. And then most of what I'm saying and most of what's been on television has not been fully involved with the. I mean, you're only seeing bits and parts of the abduction phenomenon on television. Most of what people are saying, they have not picked up in popular culture. These are personal experiences that happen to them, but I know that it happens to everybody.
Can you tell us an example?
Well, taking an egg. I used to think, in Secret Life, I wrote that they were extremely interested in human sexual response because they would look into the eyes of people, and they would put these people, male or female, on top of one another and have them go through the business of intercourse, and then and they would stare in their eyes and all that. And I thought, well, they keep doing this. They must be interested in human sexual response in some way. That's all I could think of. But what it turned out to be was that they're not interested in human sexual response at all, not even a little bit. They're not interested in it. What they're interested in is at the peak moment of this event, they take the man away from the woman, who then basically ejaculates into a receptacle. It's a sperm-taking technique. Why they use that? There's other techniques that they have too. So.
Well, if they can control the mind, they could obviously do that instantly.
Right, and when they do that, and they do that with the woman by controlling the mind, and the first time I heard this, here's a story about the first time I heard. I had discovered this business about staring at people from a distance of touching foreheads, or maybe an inch or two, and staring. And I would ask them, can you avert your eyes, turn them left or right? And they say no. I say, well, can you close your eyelids? No, they can't do that either. And I couldn't figure out what it was. And I finally realized they were using the optic nerve, which can be seen from the outside at the back of the eye, as a conduit to stimulate any particular neurons that they wanted to in the brain, or to do different things in the brain neurologically. One of the things that they can do is they can stimulate sexual response. And when that comes for a woman, they immediately, at that point, they go down and they take an egg. Now, or 2 eggs, or whatever egg is coming out of the ovary. How that happens, I do not know, because that does not happen in normal human life. That's not when women ovulate. That's not what happens. In some way, that facilitates their taking of the eggs. I've had people tell me that hundreds of times. That is not an exaggeration. And one time, this is a story I was going to tell you. Before I knew this, this guy, this tall gray alien, was staring into this 16-year-old girl's eyes. Now, she was older when I was working with her, because I don't work with people who are. I like to work with older people. I want them to have a life first before they start working with me. So I don't work with anybody under the age of 21, and I don't even like to do that. I'd rather work with people who are 50 or 40 or whatever, who already have a life and kids and a wife and a husband and all that. So she's 16. She's remembering back to when she was 16 years old, and I asked her. This is all brand new stuff. I said, what's going on in your mind while he's staring at you? And she said to me, she said, I really like him. I really, really like him. Oh, he's really a good person. I hope he likes me. She says to me, the 16-year-old talking to me, And I'm thinking to myself, here's a bug-eyed monster who's staring at her eyes, and she's falling in love with him. How could that be possible? And I didn't know anything about this sexual response thing yet. And But that was sort of the beginning of it. It went back a little bit more when I first discovered it with another woman. But
like the Stockholm Syndrome?
No, it's not the Stockholm Syndrome. They're just creating sexual response so that they can take an egg. That's all I care about.
Wow. And so, there's a bunch of comments that came up. And let me just pull one question for you because I keep missing all these questions. How many commonalities do you have on abductees that I have to read this differently because it's written like he's asking me to ask you, that you have written about that you use as you're checking your abductee in hand? I guess the person is asking how many commonalities are there?
Oh, if there weren't commonalities, if it didn't have that soporific aspect of everybody saying the same thing all the time, we wouldn't be talking now, because it would be idiosyncratic. It would be every person would have a story based on their own life in some way or another, especially based on their own country. But this is a phenomenon that cuts across everything. It cuts across all religions, all racial aspects, all geographic boundaries. It cuts across educational levels. I have people who are psychiatrists and psychologists and therapists who come to me to find out what has been happening with them, even though that they're taking the risk. Because I'm just some amateur guy. I'm just a guy off the street. They're taking a risk to come to me, and knowing that I will not be, say who their actual name is or where they teach or anything like that, because they are driven to wanting to find out what's going on with them. And when they tell me what's happening to them, it's pretty much the same in all the different aspects, of which there are thousands of aspects to it. You can dissect it into little tiny pieces, and so it's all pretty much the same. Now, it can be very, very different, extremely different, if you don't know what you're doing when you do hypnosis. And you ask the wrong questions in the wrong way, and you call for wrong answers, and you don't understand the role of confabulation. People will confabulate. They'll say things that they will swear to as being true, and it turns out not to be true.
Do they actually believe it's true, though?
Oh, absolutely. And most confabulation takes place in consciously recalled memories. Now, obviously, if 90 to 95% of abductees don't remember anything, those aren't the ones we work with. We work with the ones who do know something is going on, who do have a memory of something happening, or a bizarre dream of aliens in their bedroom, or something like that, and other things too, which then drive them to me. I take people who basically are it's interfering with their life. If it's not interfering with their life, if everything is okay, they're married, they're happy, everything is fine, I'm not about to open this up for them and destroy their lives in some way or another. I don't want to do that. I want to work with people where this is getting in the way of their normal life. They deserve to have a normal life, and that's what I'm looking for. So basically, the commonalities are critical, and it's extremely important that they say the same things. If, however, I take for truth what they first tell me, for example, I will tell you a risque story. This woman is 12 years old. This is conscious memory. She's out in the backyard playing. She got the urge to go to the bathroom, but it was too far. It was an urgent urge. It was too far to go back to her house. She was in a wooded area. Nobody was around, so she, as we like to say in the halls of academe, took a dump near a tree. So when she looked at it, she was astounded to see a tapeworm in it. And that really was sort of amazing, but that does happen, and so I think so. we did a session on that because it was sort of fascinating. So she's out playing in the back of the woods, and then there's this UFO there, and then she goes into the UFO, and there are these aliens, and this happens, and that happens, and this happens, and that happens, and this happens, and that happens, and then she comes out, and then she runs home. I said, well, wait a second, what about how you had to go to the bathroom by the tree and all that? She said, no, I don't think that happened. I said, what about that tapeworm that stuck in your mind for all these years? She said, no, I don't think that happened either. She had that in her mind for years and years and years, and when it became time for her to just describe it to me, I was ready to listen to it. It wasn't there. That's confabulation. I can tell you story after story after story after story, but this is how you handle it. Here's another story. This is how you handle it. Woman wakes up in the middle of the night. There's Abraham Lincoln standing at the foot of her bed. He's tall. He's got a stovepipe hat on as his beard. He's standing there with somebody else or something like that. They take her out of the bed. They take her up into this UFO, etc. And I'm not saying a word about Abraham Lincoln. And finally, I say, well, now, they take her clothes off. She's in a room. They pick her up. She's walking down a hallway. I say, well, where is Abraham Lincoln? Oh, he's in front of me, walking down this hallway. I said, okay, well, I said, can you see his stovepipe hat? She said, no. I said, well, can you see his hair then? If he's not wearing his hat, can you see his hair in the back of his head if he's in front of you? No, I can't see that. I said, well, when you're looking at him, are you looking up at him? Are you looking straight across at him? Or are you looking down at him? So, well, I'm sort of looking straight across at him. And then she said, I don't think this is Lincoln. That's how you do it. It's just simple chronological and logical questioning. That's all. And the first session has most confabulation, and the two major areas of confabulation are what I just described, which is describing aliens. And believe me, you get people who tell me that there's 248 different kinds of aliens who are visiting here, and abducting people. And people who tell me there are 27 different kinds of aliens. And this is all confabulation from what I can tell. Sure. And so if you work with them doing chronological and logical questioning based on what they're saying, then not based on what I think they should be saying, they learn very quickly that memory is slippery, and they had remembered things that didn't happen or weren't true. And what they're remembering is actually stranger than what they thought they were remembering, sometimes. And then they become sort of scientist observers. They understand the enormity of this. They understand the incredible aspect of this phenomenon for everybody, and they want to be accurate then. They don't want confabulation. They want to be accurate about what's happening to them. And I have a style of questioning which causes that accuracy, which allows for it.
Well, I've got a question along those lines, if that's all right. Have you seen, as time has gone by, like an overall change? You say that there's, the story sounds the same, but is it your questions also the same, or do you change your questions?
No, my questions are pretty much the same. I only ask what they see, what they talk about. Now, sometimes it depends. I will ask them sometimes if they're gone for 4 hours and they tell me about 15 minutes worth of material. I know they skipped a lot of stuff. So I'll tell them, well, let's just see if anything else happened. Then I'll count from 3 to 1 or something like that, and tell them, when I get to 1, you'll remember something else happening if it did, and it might if nothing else happened, that's fine too. And then they remember, oh, they took me into a different room, and they did this and they did that, and then they took me into another room and they did this and they did that, But they will. That's only in the first several sessions. Usually, after a while, they get used to it, and they understand that when they go out of the room, they know that I'm going to ask them Well, if you're going out of the room, they've already described the room to me because they said they were going into the room, so I get to talk about the room then. Then when they go out of the room, I ask them, do they go straight? Do they straight out of the room? Do they go left, or do they turn right, or something like that? Now, there's only so many ways you can go, So they say, well, so they know right away. They say, well, I'm turning right into a hallway now. And they've learned to be accurate because I'm sort of asking for it. I'm asking for accuracy. And when that happens, nothing bubbles up that is bizarre. There's nothing to do with religion in there. There's nothing to do with being transcendent beings, helping to heal the world or heal us. Or whatever people say. I just don't ever hear that. As long as I'm asking questions the correct way, and they're leading me on what questions I can ask. I can't just tell them, ask them a question out of the blue. I'm going on this journey physically with them, and they're doing things. And I can ask them questions about what's going on.
Have you ever heard, like, I know you said, what was it, spophoric, whatever that word is that I'm going to have to look up. They put you to sleep. Have you had...
Soporific means sleep-inducing.
Okay. Have you had, say, spoken to someone and multiple times your story is similar, you're falling asleep, and all of a sudden there's something new or something bizarre that you actually believe is part of the story?
Yeah, that does happen, and it may not be necessarily validated by others. It only happens when I've worked with the person for a number of years, and I know and I trust that person. And usually the person will say to me, now, I don't know whether this is true, whether this is happening or not, but I'll tell you anyway. And then they'll say something that makes perfect logical sense in some way. And I'll latch onto that because I know this person, I've known this person well, and I've had 10, 15, 20, or 30 sessions with him or her, and I know that they are extremely careful in how they're describing things, and they've learned how to do it, and they've learned how to warn me and all the rest of that stuff. Even then, and it's usually a minor thing, but even then, I prefer to wait for somebody else to say the same thing. And the phenomenon is so routinized that invariably somebody else will, It's all a matter of questioning, and it's a matter of trust, and it's there are some people who will ask a person a question. They're remembering something that happened 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. And in the middle of this discussion, the hypnotist will say, I want you to ask the alien a question. I want you to ask them, what planet do they come from? Or something like that,
Hang on a second here. We have a caller. Can you say your first name and question, please?
Bobby.
Hey, Bobby. How are you?
Good, man. The question is, actually, you kind of got it wrong, is what checks does he still have where abductees that he believes are real have told him that he keeps himself and doesn't share in his books? How many of those does he have that he still uses to see that are commonalities?
Okay, just to let you know, we only have 2 minutes left. Thank you, Bobby.
You're welcome. See you, Mike.
In the first couple of sessions, I asked deliberately misleading questions. I'm not going to say what they are, but they asked, and I know them. Bud used to ask people, that most abductees say that there's a yellow sort of bright yellow alien who stands off to the side and watches things as they go on and doesn't do anything. You can see him, can't you? Of course, that's never been said by anybody ever at any time. And so, and there's another researcher, John Carpenter, who had a whole list of these types of questions to ask, and I'll ask those questions. I can tell fairly quickly how responsive the person is, and they're usually wary of asking questions that aren't going to apply to them in some way. But I do that. Absolutely, and I try to do that with everybody, and for the first several sessions until I'm pretty much satisfied that they're trying to be as accurate as possible. Nobody wants to say anything that's wrong or false. Nobody wants that, least of all me.
Right. So, David, what's your website? And one more time, the name of your book, and it's on your website.
Right. The website is UFO Abduction, no S, .com, just singularabduction.com. The book is called Walking Among Us, how the aliens plan to control humanity. The Walking Among Us was something I came up with on the spur of the moment. The other part was their subtitle. They had a different title, which I will not tell you.
Okay.
Because it was straight out of the pages of the National Enquirer, so I figured, no.
That's not going to work. Well, thanks so much. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. So that's it for the show tonight, and I want to thank everyone for helping out, starting out with Keith Rowland for helping out with the live show, and we have Peggy Shunning, who helps us out with the Facebook page. Remember to like us on Facebook for all the latest UFO news. Next week, we have Mark D'Antonio coming up, and we're going to talk about astronomy and UFO research, UFOTOG, as he calls it, and a lot more. And so I want to thank everyone for supporting the show. If you're listening this long, you are a supporter, or you're listening live, and I greatly appreciate it. And so thanks a lot, everyone. We'll be back next week right here on the Dark Matter Digital Network at 8 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Hopefully you change your clock for daylight savings. All right, we'll talk to you later. See you next week, and keep your eyes to the sky.